This is episode 81 of the Why Not Me podcast, The Power of Presence. I'm your host, Danita Brummer. I'm a wife, mom, member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and a life coach. And in this podcast, we talk about how to overcome our inner obstacles to endure this life well. Happy 4th of July. I hope you all are having a great time today with family and yummy food and watching the fireworks and being grateful for this amazing country, United States of America. I want to let you in on a little secret. I would love to have 10,000 downloads of this podcast by January 1st of next year. I'm at about 4,800 right now. So as of this recording, we would have to more than double the current download rate, which right now is about 75 downloads a week. So let me tell you why. For some reason, I don't know why, the Lord has put a mission on my heart. It includes talking about my life experiences, teaching psychological concepts, discussing the gospel, amongst other things, for the purpose of something. I don't know exactly what it is, if I'm being completely honest. It has something to do with being our full, true selves and connecting with God. It has something to do with gathering Zion, with doing our individual work in the world. I haven't quite put words to this mission that I feel called to, but in an effort to use my downloads as a metric for this work in the world that I call mine, I am going to attempt to incentivize you to leave a rating, a review, and share the podcast with others. On episode 100, so in 19 episodes, I'm going to announce a winner. The winner will receive a pair of second-generation Apple AirPods. Pretty awesome, right? And if the winner was referred to the podcast by a friend, their friend will also get a pair of Apple AirPods. What better prize for podcast listeners, right? In order to qualify for the prize, you must do 4.5 things. First one is listen to an episode. So you're here, you're listening, you're already most of the way done. The second thing is to leave a 5-star rating. I mean, I'll accept any rating. You can leave a 1-star rating if you want, but I'm only going to send a prize to someone who really loves the podcast. The third thing is to leave a review. And the half thing is to tell me one takeaway in your review, something you learned, something you thought was interesting, something you liked. Don't make it too complicated. This is basically just a way for me to ensure that you really did listen to the podcast. And number 4 is to fill out a Google form. The link to the Google form is in the description of this episode in your podcast app. And you can feel free to share on social media or other platforms to increase your odds of winning. I hopefully am going to have posted a post about this giveaway that you can share. It will for sure be going out on Facebook, but I am logged out of my Instagram account. And when I went to log back in, I couldn't verify the normal means. And so I have to wait 2 to 3 days for the help desk to get back to me. So if I can log back in time, I will have that on Instagram as well. It should be there shortly after that, if not on the day that this podcast episode airs. All right. So thank you so much in advance for helping me get this work into the world. I really want moms especially, but really everyone to be their true full selves and to connect with God and the Spirit, because that's how we get to do our work in the world. That's how we know what we're supposed to do and how to do it. So on to the actual episode. Today, I want to talk about presence and the power of presence. But first, I want to tell you what brought me here talking about presence. My coach just recently told me that one of the things I'm good at is simplifying things. Now, I don't know if I necessarily agree with her, but I do always try to simplify things. I like to take complex ideas or even just walking into a room that is really messy and creating order. One of my life mottos is simple does not mean easy. And while that is true, simple and difficult is better than complex and difficult. So I'm always trying to simplify things. In the last year or so, as I've been on my own healing journey, I've I'm a highly reflective person. So I'm always thinking about how do I make this more simple? How do I share this with other people so that they can understand? The experiences we have as humans are very complex, and trying to explain our experiences sometimes is not simple, is not easy. So I'm always trying to simplify. And elegance is the word I would use if I was a scientist. One day I realized that as a coach, the most important thing I can do as a coach is about the energy I bring to the coaching experience. And the energy I want is presence. I spent a lot of time thinking about this, trying to poke holes at it, trying to say, like, is that the most important thing? And I keep coming back to this idea that presence is the most important thing. And then I realized that it's the same thing, whether you're a coach or a mom or whoever you are in the world. Presence, the energy you live your life in, is probably the most important thing. So, whether you're working on your marriage or you have a difficult relationship with an extended family member, or you're really focusing on your parenting or something at work, whatever it is, we want to be present. Okay, so let's define this for a minute. The online dictionary definitions were severely lacking, in my opinion. For present as an adjective, Merriam-Webster's dictionary says now existing or in progress, and being in view or at hand. Yes, now existing or in progress. That is true. That is a description of presence or being present, but it doesn't really capture the full meaning of present when I say we want to be present as people. And being in view or at hand, well, we all know someone can be there without actually being there, if you know what I mean. So, what I'm referring to is a physical, mental, and emotional presence. In fact, the physical presence is the least of it. I coach my clients over Zoom. I'm not physically present with them. I mean, I kind of am because I'm on their computer screen and their computer screen is with them. But the person, my body is not where they are. And yet, I hope as a coach, I still have presence. I actually found it pretty ironic that in the Merriam-Webster's online dictionary, it listed an obsolete definition of presence as attentive. And I think that might actually be the most accurate definition of what I'm speaking of. It's a mental and emotional attentiveness, a beingness that is here now, right? Okay, so why do we want this? That now that we've kind of defined what it is, and I think you probably know, but sometimes it's useful to just get it out there. Like, what are we even talking about? Why do we want to be present? Like, what difference does that make for us? So, I want you to pick a relationship. Like I said, it could be your parenting. If you're a coach, it could be in your coaching. It could be with colleagues or coworkers, friends, any kind of relationship. If it were me, I would choose a relationship that's really important to me, maybe even one that is frustrating or one that you're working on. So I want you to imagine being in a room with that person, and I want you to imagine them being present with you. Now, imagine them not being present. Maybe they're on their phone, or maybe they're thinking about something else, or they seem distracted in some way. What difference does it make to you when you imagine this relationship, this person? It makes a lot of difference, right? When they aren't present with you, there's a connection lacking. They might not be totally disconnected, but an element of that disconnection or an element of that connection is missing. Connection. That is what we are always all wanting. And presence creates connection. That's the why. That's why presence is so important. My hunch is that we all want to be seen and loved for who we truly are, our full selves, all the flaws, all the good parts, all the strengths, all of it. And if there's something that we can't be present to within us, then nobody else will be able to be present to it either because we'll hide it away. But even when someone is simply willing to try to see and love us for who we truly are, there's magic in that, right? Those are the people who make us feel so good, who make us feel so loved, who we want to be with. Now, there are other reasons why you might want to practice presence also. Do you suffer from anxiety or depression? Do you have chronic pain of any kind? Are you lonely or overwhelmed or find yourself worrying a lot? Do you want to feel more connection with God? Practicing presence can help with all of these things. I kind of think that presence and the spirit and love, they're all kind of the same thing that we give different words to. Isn't that interesting? How do we know if we are or aren't present? Now, here's my take on this. We are always present to something when we are conscious, right? Unless we're asleep. And then even then, I feel like I'm pretty present in my dreams. But for this episode, we're talking about relationships and, people that are important to us. So the real question is, what keeps us from being present in our relationships? So I kind of divided this into two categories. There are things that keep us from being present in our outer world, and there are things that keep us from being present in our inner world. The outer world is like work or other people's drama or distraction or entertainment. Those things can pull us away from being totally here now. And then there's our inner worlds. And I kind of think this is the bigger one. Anything that's going on for us in our minds or in our emotions, right? Fear, worry, anxiety, indecision, pain, grief, inadequacy, like pretty much every negative emotion is going to keep us from being totally present. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later in the episode. Interest, like being interested in something, although that might go more under the bucket of distraction and entertainment. So these are things that will all keep us from being fully present, right? Which, as we can see, we all have all of these things all the time. So it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of attention and intention to develop presence. Okay, so how do we cultivate it? How do we cultivate presence? As I was preparing for this episode, I came across an article that claims, I'm going to drop the link to the article in the show notes, claims we have an average attention span of 8 seconds, less than a goldfish, which apparently goldfish have attention spans of 9 seconds. That is insane. It made me think of one of Satan's greatest tools is distraction. And it seems like he has really figured out, he's like on his top game of lulling the average person into extreme distraction if our attention spans are an average of 8 seconds long. Or I don't know if it's I think it's the average American has an attention span of 8 seconds. That is so crazy to me. I listened to a podcast, Jared Halverson's podcast. I'll drop a link to that too, because it is excellent. And his episodes are like anywhere from like 1.5 to 5 hours long, 1.5 hours to 5 hours long. And I listen and it keeps my attention. Now, that doesn't mean, I don't ever get distracted, but I think my attention span is a lot longer, which means if you're listening to this podcast, you might be a little higher than average as well, but still 8 seconds. So how do we cultivate presence when our attention span is only 8 seconds long? Well, just like last week, we practice. Last week, I encouraged you to practice your desires like it's a skill, right? A skill to allow your desires to be there. Presence is also a skill. Some people naturally have it, and others need to work a little bit more to develop it, but it's still something that we can work to develop. Practice being here now. I imagine if you're listening to this podcast, that maybe you have AirPods in your ears, or you're doing dishes, or you're on a walk, or you're driving, or something like that. So this podcast is probably like the second or third thing you're doing, right? Can you just be here wherever you are now? Not worry about the past, not worry about the future. Just be here now. Can you practice being with someone, not try thinking of the next question, not trying to come up with a valid counter argument, not, reflecting on the past, not figuring out what the future is going to look like, and not wanting to look at your phone, right? That's kind of hard for most people. And I want to take a little tangent here. What is so compelling about our phones anyway? I think our smartphones are one of the top reasons why we're not present. My single greatest parenting mistake was allowing my child, my oldest, to have a phone when she was too young, and she was 12, and then not paying close enough attention to her activity on the phone. And I thought I was checking in, pretty regularly. I guess really my biggest mistake was getting myself a smartphone, right? But you know what? The reason why those smartphones are so enticing is because of connection. Because every time we pick up our phone and we check an app, social media, email, whatever it is, when we get new information, we get a little dopamine hit in our brains, and our brains tell us, do that again, do that again, do that again, because new information is exciting and connecting. New information connects us to other people. It connects us to the world. So the very thing that we want most can and will work against us in certain situations. Okay, that's the end of my tangent. I wanted to give you a few practical tips on ways to build your presence, and I started listing them out, and I had to stop myself at 10. So 10. I'm thinking about turning this into a little workbook, maybe for another day. The first one has to do with that smartphone, and it is to have a digital sunset and sunrise. Have a space between the time you wake up and the time you connect yourself to the outside world, or a space between the time you're connecting yourself to the outside world and the time you go to sleep. Even if it's 1 minute, have a space. I think honestly, probably most Americans don't even have 1 minute. 1 minute of space between when they wake up or fall asleep and when they're connected to the outside world. The longer you can make that space, the better. I shoot for an hour a day combined, an hour a day where I'm not connecting on my phone, on TV, radio, anything like that. Some kind of like electronic connection, especially because we get that dopamine hit, right? So it's like really what I'm talking about here is unwiring that desire to be on electronics. Connect to yourself and to God and to the real people around you first. I have to admit that this is a pretty hard thing for me, especially the evening one. The morning one is much easier. I get up and I use the bathroom and I brush my teeth and I get in my exercise clothes and I grab my phone, but I don't look at it. And then I go for a walk. And when it has been an hour since I woke up, then I allow myself to look at my phone. Am I perfect at this? No. But the evening, the digital sunset is much harder for me. And I think it actually is probably more powerful for me. I notice though that the less I pick up my phone first thing in the morning and last thing at night, the less of a draw it is to me. Now, I don't watch a lot of TV, and I know that is a thing for many people. My husband watches a lot of TV. I don't have anything against TV, but it is a way to connect to the outside world. So try to have a gap. Don't try to not fall asleep to the TV. Have a gap between turning the TV off and when you actually fall asleep. If you can bring some of these other tools I'm going to talk about into that gap, even better. Okay, number 2 is meditation. I'm a huge fan of meditation. I've gotten into meditation more and more over the last year, and it has been so revolutionary and so connecting for me. So that's why I'm a huge fan. I think meditation helps us lengthen that time between stimulus and response. It helps us lengthen the time between when our kid yells at us and when we yell back. And then in that time, there's choice. I think it helps to connect to ourselves and to God. It helps us connect to ourselves and God. Prayer is a form of meditation. Meditation slows us down, which is exactly what we need when we are practicing presence. The definition of meditation is to engage in mental exercise, such as concentrating on one's breathing or a repetition of a mantra, for the purpose of reaching a heightened level of spiritual awareness. Now, when I think about meditation, for me, it is a very spiritual practice because I practice Christ-centered meditation, but I don't even think the spiritual part of it is the purpose. Then I thought, well, author Rob Bell says everything is spiritual. So maybe I'm wrong about that. I will drop the link to that book, which I highly recommend, in the show notes. Number 3, journal. We have been urged by our Latter-day Prophets to keep a journal. And for a long time, I thought it was simply because of family history purposes. But now, the more I learn about embodiment and meditation and presence and all these things that are connected, the more I think that journaling has more than just the purpose of family history. It really forces you to slow down. It's kind of like a written meditation, honestly. It causes you to slow down. It causes you to reflect. It causes you to be with yourself. It's a total presence builder. Number 4, practice mindfulness. So meditation can sometimes be kind of a subset of mindfulness. I'm just giving you these in the order they came to my mind. Mindfulness is practicing placing our attention on our senses. In general, there's different kinds of mindfulness you can practice, but that's generally the idea. Mindfulness requires you to be with what is in the current moment. So it really requires you to be present. And it's kind of an action that can bring you into presence. So let's try it here and now. What are 3 things you can see right now? What are 3 things you can hear right now? What are 3 things you can smell right now? What are 3 things you can feel right now? And the most difficult, unless you happen to be eating, what are 3 things you can taste right now? I'm going to add one here. What is one thing the Spirit is saying to you right now? And I added that last one because I think our intuition or the Spirit is actually kind of like a sixth sense. So anytime, wherever you are, you can do that mindfulness practice. List 3 things for each of your senses. Now, I usually, when I get to smell and taste, I'm like, nothing. I can't smell anything. So then I start like sniffing myself or like, oh, can I smell something? So it's totally fine if you can't find 3 things. It's the intention is the practice of it brings you into this moment. If you were thinking about something else, it brought you here, right? Okay, number 5, When you're in relationship with someone, and this could be a conversation or not, practice being really curious about them. Allow yourself to wonder and wander in your mind about that person and resist the urge to center yourself in the conversation or in your curiosities. So just practice putting your focus on the other person and questions and what about this and what about that? That's like a great exercise. Number 6, be in nature. But there's a little qualification to this one. Really be there. Don't be in nature on your phone. Be in nature. Notice the sights and the sounds and the smells and the feelings and everything. Like really be there and soak it in. Number 7, and this is going to sound very life coachy of me, but feel your emotions. Now, this one requires a little bit of a lengthier explanation. Our inner world, like we talked about earlier, and especially our negative emotions, are probably the biggest thing that keep us from being present. We don't like experiencing negative emotions. So our clever brains will do pretty much anything to keep us from being with them. But when we can be present to our emotions and like really feel our emotions, and I realize practicing presence with this tip, it's sort of like a loop, right? You have to be present to your emotions in order to be more present in the world. When we allow our emotions and let them process through, then they don't take as much of our attention, and thus they don't keep us from being present, especially being present with other people, right? Number 8, bring yourself back to the present moment when you notice you are thinking about the past or the future or how you feel. If you do this 100 times, and I promise you will be more present in your life and in your relationships. You can combine this one with number 5, which is about that being in relationship and being really focused on the other person. Just, it's like the same thing, basically. It's the same muscle, like bring yourself to the present. Like you notice your mind wandering, bring yourself back. Number 9, stop trying to multitask. Presence is the very opposite of productivity, which is what our culture really pushes. Presence is being not productive. It's just being, not doing, right? We are human beings, not human doings. Presence is the essence of being. And number 10, breathe. Now, you can also combine this one with number 8, bringing your mind back to the present moment, or really probably with any of them that I listed here. Breathe in and out through your nose. And there's scientific reason for that. 3 times every time you notice you're not present, every time you notice your mind is somewhere else. It will slow your physiology down. It will literally slow your heart rate, slow everything down. It will send a message to your brain that you are safe. And safety is a requirement for presence. If you're not safe, if someone scary with a gun or something was chasing you, you're not going to be present, right? You're going to be like, I got to get out of here. And that's what you should be, right? But when we're just in our normal lives, when we're in conversation with people, we want to be present because we aren't unsafe, right? Okay, my challenge to you this week is to notice when you are present and when you are not. Notice when others are present to you and when they are not. Awareness is probably going to be the first step for most of us. I've given you the reasons for being present, or some reasons, and I've given you a bunch of tools, kind of practices of how to practice presence. One thing I didn't mention, which is such a good tool, is yoga. Like meditation and yoga, 2 really, really amazing tools. And I hope that these things will help you be more present in your life, which will in turn help you feel more connected to God, to yourself, and to the important people in your life. If you are a coach listening to this episode, I want to let you know that I'm launching a small group program that is all about cultivating presence as a practitioner. You can go to my website, danitabremmer.com, and click on the button at the top menu that says for coaches to get more information. We start September 7th. It's a small group. I'm capping it at 8 people. And it's basically going to be practicing coaching, and I will be watching and giving you feedback, but we're going to be using that coaching container to figure out why or where or how we are not present. There's a pretty awesome bonus for those who sign up by tomorrow, July 5th. And if you are listening to this late, maybe in the next week or so, reach out to me and I might still give you the bonus. So if this piques your curiosity, don't hesitate to check out the details. If you are not a coach, if you're a mom or someone else who wants to cultivate presence in your relationships, I'm considering creating a small group program for you too. I will drop a link in the show notes for an interest list. If there's enough interest, I might do it. I've been thinking about doing it, and I'm doing this coaching program. So I'm kind of like, do I want to do both at the same time? If I do it, it will be low cost. And, signing up for a free session with me is also always an option. We can get you started on, if there's something that you heard in this episode that you think, oh yes, I really need that, then just sign up for a free session and we'll get you going even before the group is going. The more I think about increasing presence for each of us individually, the more I think it is the antidote to all the evil in the world. And it's the key to being our full selves and connecting to God and to others. That's enough for now. And so are you. Don't forget to enter the giveaway by leaving a rating and a review for the podcast. Tell me one takeaway and then share the podcast with a friend. Then go fill out the Google form I have linked here. And if you're ready to increase presence in your life, go to danitabremmer.com to schedule a free session with me. Until next time, go be you and follow the Spirit.